Hello everyone, it's Diane and I have these 3 journals that I made out of vintage textbooks complete. So I am going to go through them one at a time. Let's start with this one. This is the science book. So the title that it will be listed under is Science, or Science for Tomorrow's World. I don't know how I'll put it in there, but it'll be one of those. So this is a extra wide book. Let me measure it. I know that, well, I don't remember now what the pages were. It's 10 inches by 9 1/8. So it's quite wide. I tied it with some tulle. I left it pretty long. There's lots of room in this book for growth, for adding things, bulk to the book. So I left this long so that it can, grow with the book, or you can cut it off. And if you'd like, because it's so wide, you may want to tie it this way. Or you may want to just leave the tie off. So that is completely up to you. So let's just look, excuse me, look at the book. So there were a lot of pinks and purples on the cover. So I went with this vintage pillowcase. I left the hem in it. You can, whoops, I'm sorry. You can see the stitching there, so it's doubled right here. But it's a really pretty vintage flowered sheet pillowcase. I put some gray rickrack there. I love the back of it, the blocking on it. I added a little lavender ball chain with just a few little dangly things on it. And this you can write something on it or stamp something on it. I left it blank. I added a fabric triangle here and a little yo-yo. Oh, and there's a piece of vintage sheet behind this triangle. And the sheet and the triangle wrap around this edge. I left the end paper the way it was. Added some purple crocheted trim. Okay, there are 3 signatures. I think there's like 44 pages front and back in each signature, I think, something like that. So the front of each signature is patchwork paper. You can see I've taken scraps of scrapbook paper and just stitched them together. And then I cut them to size. And on the front of each signature, so you get 3 of these, are the paper clips that I made with the vintage magazine advertisements. So this is Wonder Bread on a paper clip, and a couple of journaling cards inside, or tucked underneath the paper clip. So you get 3 of those vintage advertisement paper clips in each journal. On the back you can see the stitching where I patched the paper together, but you can write, you can make it fun writing or doodling inside those sections. And here we have a calendar page that's all done in black and red. It was for the American Cancer Society. Black and white and red. So that's pretty cool. And I added a flip here. You can journal on this page. There's lots of room, lots of empty space. So you can journal, you can doodle, you can glue stuff in. You can just have a lot of fun with these books. I would have a lot of fun playing in a book like this. There's a piece of wallpaper here with a little bit of fabric stitched to the top. Vintage fabrics. Well, the blue is vintage. I don't know if the red gingham is. This is from a calendar book, an birthday and anniversary book, and I pulled it out as a folio, but I reinforced with a piece of scrapbook paper. So there's lots of room for writing there. Piece of scrapbook paper here with a vintage fabric triangle and a little fabric heart and a piece of green gingham ribbon. This came out of one of the science books. Might have been this one. And this is a piece of vintage paper with lines on it. This came from a Coca-Cola calendar. I used a heart-shaped paper clip, and this is an envelope made out of printed cardstock, and I just included a couple of journaling cards. It is supposed to be put on with the flap over the edge of the page, and then you have your heart paper clip. If I can put it on right. There. This is from where you could order albums. So it has a list of albums that, record albums that you could order. This is from a planner book. There's the other side, daily planner. Well, it was actually just a pad of paper. And this is an envelope made out of something. Somebody made that for me. I didn't make it. So I don't know if it came out of a book or a calendar or something. And this is just a cut off piece of scrapbook paper that I tucked in there for journaling. And then here's one of the stacked pocket pieces that I made out of the book page. And I believe this came from the math book. So then I made journaling cards out of book pages too, and this came from this book, I believe. So you can write on that. And this is just a card with a journaling spot glued to it. These pockets, I think they're open all the way down, so I put a tab on it so it won't go all the way down. Okay. Here's the other side of that lined paper. It says weekly work schedule. I have a tablet of this that I got at a flea market. I took some of the scraps of the patchwork paper and made pockets, and then here is one of my pocket tags. It's got a couple of little tags tucked in here, and another little tag that was a printable that I put in there. I just sewed some muslin and crocheted, vintage crochet at the top. And then this is from one of the science books. There's a vintage applique there. There's a piece of fabric sewn along the edge of that page. The wallpaper. I didn't say what this page was. It's from a vintage, it was in an envelope, and it's opened up into a very large page, and it was a handyman's type of instruction and pattern book. So I got a bunch of them for different projects. And so I got to use some of them as part of that calendar. The fabric flip. And then the second signature again has patchwork paper, and the paper clip is Goodyear vinyl film. A couple of tags for writing. This is grid paper. It was, I believe, an architect's paper, and you can see where they started drawing a house there. I don't know if you can see the grid, but it's there. Then there's some scrapbook paper, and I took another piece of scrapbook paper, made a tuck spot out of it, and I sewed on a piece of a linen calendar, one of those calendars that they would hang on their kitchen wall with a picture on the top, and it just had all the months on it, and then I just added a piece of vintage trim there. And just a scrap of scrapbook cardstock and an image from the geometry book. A fabric flip. This is printer paper. but it's decorated in roses. And this is from a children's workbook on Spanish. It's really cute. There's some more graph paper, but this one is not vellum. And here's another piece of that instruction paper for the handyman. And I sewed this fabric collage on. And when I sewed it down here, the paper is kind of thin, and this is a thick lace. And sometimes the needle, when it hits a thick piece of this kind of lace, it punches the lace right through the paper. So that's what happened. I managed to snip it out, but then I covered up the hole with that little printable. There's a really pretty wallpaper here with grapes and vines, and just a card sewn on, a little scrap of paper. You could tuck something in there. Here's some scrapbook paper and another piece of that weekly schedule paper, and another envelope. Looks like a map there. It says, oh, it's a big yellow globe. I didn't even notice what that was because I can see the word Japan there. And I put a little printable label there and a couple of printable cards inside. Somebody made this envelope for me too. I got a bunch of envelopes a long time ago in Happy Mail, and I used quite a few of them in these journals. There's another scrap of scrapbook paper. I just did a little paper collage there, stamped that vintage camera, and that's a stamped image. This was just a stenciled card that I had in my stash, and I put it in that pocket. Library catalog card with a little fabric fox on it. A vintage playing card with those gorgeous yellow roses. There's a little fabric tab and a little printable piece that you can use for journaling. So a little printable piece and a piece of, it's the same piece of paper as there. So fabric pleated up there. I love this one with the red doors and shutters. Another envelope that was made for me. This is from a magazine page, and there's the Sydney Opera House on a card. You could collage over that if you wanted to, and then I did collage on this. This is a page from this book, so there's lots of space here for writing, and I did some collage on that side. And then behind the pocket, I collaged on a napkin onto a time card, tucked that in there. And then this is just a scrap of paper and music paper and a printable library card. I believe this was Artsology. Pretty fabric flip. This is purple velvet right there. This is a heavy, kind of a heavy cardstock envelope, and I decorated it with that peach colored or orange trim and this button that I made. I Mod Podged a little circle cut from the science paper and then put the orange floss in there and then glued that on there. And this is a little booklet that I cut from one of the science books, and I cut this out of the book. I think it's this book actually, and then made a booklet out of it. And this is from this book. I love this image, these kind of images. And just tuck those into the envelope. And then behind the envelope is this large card with an embossed element on it. As I mentioned in a video, I had disassembled a little box that I had made to store handmade cards, and these were the dividers. And the last signature has a honey-made graham cracker box, paperclip, and a journaling card. This is a really cute book jacket from a vintage children's book. Hi, Mr. Robin. And I added some washi tape there because this part had been taped down to the book. So I don't remember if it was sticky or if I just wanted to cover up the marks from it. This is vintage bark cloth. Here is part of the fabric flip, and a piece of really vintage lace, and then a little scrap of patchwork. And this was a school workbook. There's a playing card with collage on it and a piece of Pizzac fabric. And then I just tucked this little card in there to journal on. There's another piece of that Architect's graph paper, a piece of parchment paper. This is the Coca-Cola calendar, and another piece of the patchwork paper. I love that. And this was from this book, and it was a chapter about heat. So she's ironing. It talks about how things heat up. Wallpaper here. I love this. This was a little bit older, so I did reinforce it at the fold with some scrapbook paper. This is a really nice sheet. This came out of an old photo album. One of those big kind that you would put in 8x10, put 8x10 photos in. These pages were at the back of the book. And here we have a envelope made out of a vintage children's book. I just glued this little printable element on there. This was my favorite little collage from these school book papers, just because I love those houses. But I liked the rest of the collage too. So you get my favorite collage. Just a card stamped with my Tiffany & Co. stamp. And then this was something I made a long time ago out of an old school book or something. You can journal on that side. It's been in my stash for a long time. I figured it was about time I used it. And there's just a piece of fabric stitched to the edge of the wallpaper with a wavy stitch. And a flashcard with some postage stamps. They're Queen Elizabeth stamps in different colors. And there's a scrap of paper, scrapbook paper. And this came from one of the books, this book. And it's glued to, or sewn to, a scrap of that photo album paper. So it's really like a card. This was an envelope I made with the book paper. This was from the writing book. I put washi tape up there and then collaged this handmade paper with this image from a magazine. And inside the envelope is this tag that I made with wallpaper. And behind it is this image from this book. There's a little fabric cluster there with some lace. And then on the back page is another envelope that someone made for me out of a Where's Waldo book. So it's really busy and fun. And inside I put a cut-off piece of the scrapbook paper that you can write on. I think somebody sent these to me. Court whist card, table number, couple number. I know nothing about that game. It's a card game and a printable. And then another one of the divider cards that I had made. Okay, so this one is Science, or Science for Tomorrow's World. So I'll try not to take so much time with the other ones because they have a lot of the same elements. This one is the writing book, Writing with a Purpose, and it's red and black on the outside because that was the cover. I thought Writing with a Purpose was an excellent title for a journal. Of course, I covered up part of the title, but you know what it says. And I collaged a little piece of burlap and two black and white yo-yos, and then another one of the buttons that I had made. And it has a little scale cut from the science book. I loved this red and white and black fabric with this lady and a little girl on the bench and the buildings. I just thought it was so cute, and I was really glad to get to use it on this. And then we have a ball chain again with some little danglies. There's a number, Tim Holtz number. There's a heart, and then there's an Eiffel Tower, and this little banner that you can write on or stamp on or whatever, and it's got red netting tie on it. Again, there's room for growth. I left the end papers because there were charts on it, and I liked it that way, and this is the process of writing at a glance, so I left that. So this one has a Fleshman's margarine paper clip, and it fits on the top, so I put it on the top, and this opens up for journaling. I don't even know where I got this. Somebody gave that to me, I think. And then I love this lined index card, but it's got a tab on it. These journals are so fun and eclectic. I love the fact that it's using stash, so it's just like anything goes. There's so much room to do things with, and there's so many fun elements. This is from the Coke calendar with fabric flip. And this is an envelope with a window, and I was so tempted to put something on this paper that would show through, but I decided to let you do that. You can put something special there. This is wallpaper, and it has a little patchwork piece that I just folded over the edge. Feedsack fabric on the edge of that paper. Again, that vintage fabric triangle. This is from this book. And this one has a calendar page from a it was watercolor paintings or something, and I added this label to it. And again, the stacked pockets. I just glued some circles on it and a word and a little cluster there. I believe that these pockets don't go all the way down. No, they don't. So, got all kinds of, I think this was in here, cards that you can write on. Tucked in these. Put that one up there. You can arrange them any way you want to. Again, this is from the record album catalog, and it was for educational records. And here we have another envelope that was made for me. I had glued them together, and I left the inserts out to make sure that everything was dry before I put them in. Beautiful calendar page. Another piece of the patchwork paper, another pocket tag, and an element from one of these textbooks with a yo-yo sewn on it. These yo-yos are not the vintage ones. Like I said, I'm still working on cutting those apart and getting them ready to put in the shop. This one is an envelope. I think somebody gave this to me. I have several of them, but it's an envelope, and then it has this card inside, little pocket inside with a card. So it has 3 pieces to it, and it looks like airmail. So it's really fun. And I just put the flap over there and paper clipped it with this teardrop paper clip, because I found them. There's a little fabric cluster up there. This is wallpaper. It's an envelope. It's got a Rolodex card and an index card. This was so close to the top here that I cut away, so it'd be easier to get things in and out of it. Added that little printable card, and then these are just tucked in behind. second signature has a vintage Fig Newton box with some journaling cards. And I love this book jacket from 1950s, I think, exercise book. And this is a teacher's edition of a workbook. Has the answers written in red. I love this little collaged Milbourne card with the vintage crochet and this element from a children's book, and this is from a different children's book, Eggs and Milk, and this is Feedsack fabric. Parchment paper. This is from a calendar about quilts. Patchwork paper. This is a really pretty wallpaper. This is that from the photo album. This is an envelope made from wallpaper and a collaged card. Somebody, well, Mod Podged a napkin to it. Looks like watercolor paper. So someone gave me both of these items and they've been in my stash. And this is the wallpaper again with a strip of fabric and a little piece of trim. A vintage flash card with a little scrap of a piece of cardstock. It was border punched and then has little hearts punched out of it. And this is from the math book, and this is a vintage flash card. An envelope made from a book page with a collage on it, some washi tape up there, and an alterations tag. I love this paper clip. It's one of my favorites, with a carton of milk. A couple of cards to write on. These books were so much fun to make. This is just a scrap of printed cardstock, and I glued on a vintage ad for Valencia cottons, and then I just added a couple of items there. Tuck that in there. That black and white and red calendar. This is the envelope from that instruction sheet. So this is what it was. It was for a corner cupboard. And I have other ones, but all of the pages that I used in these books came from this envelope. To put this back in, you have to hold the envelope up. You can't lay it down and then fit it in because of the curve here. I did punch a thumb hole here, but I didn't know what I was going to put in it at the time. And then the tab is way over here, but that's okay. Plain card there. And then the envelope in the center is another, it's from a magazine. If these were my books, I would collage on these envelopes, and I left that for you to do. I didn't do that for you. Just a bunch of index cards to put inside. But that's what I would do. I would have fun collaging on the backs and on the fronts of these envelopes that are in the centers of the signatures. Another scrapbook paper pocket with a little collage there, and another booklet made from one of the science book pages. Some rickrack. And then a little playing card that you can journal on. It's just a card that has Queen Victoria on it. The other side of that envelope with another of the divider cards in there. Fabric ruffle here. And another envelope that I've had in my stash for a long time. This is made from a really old Stampin' Up paper. And I put in this little quilt card and another of the time cards with napkin. This is a wallpaper pocket with rickrack and a matchbook booklet. Okay, so this one is writing, or writing with a purpose. And then lastly, we have a math book. And I'm going to call this one Geometry. It's Principles of Arithmetic and Geometry. I tied it with a blue tool because of the blue in the center, but there's purple and gold too, so I had a lot of fun with the colors. I used a piece of a patchwork lap robe for the spine, and I love that. A wide pink rickrack, and then those fabric triangles that were just given to me, and there's rickrack here. And I like that it has the geometric patterns on the front and the back, and then just some more dangles, some dice, a heart, a wing, and a tag. I made the liner, the spine liner, wider to just kind of decorate the inside front. This one has a star-shaped paper clip. Oh, I have to add this one. I put together first before I found my paper clips, so I'm going to replace these with the vintage ones. This one gets Nabisco shredded wheat. I love that one. And these are just some cards with some fabric sewed to the top of them. Love that fabric. This is a piece of flannel. Wallpaper, some fabric up there. The stacked pockets. Love the colors on this. This is a envelope I made with one of the textbook pages, and I used some washi tape and one of the buttons that I made. Some collaging here. I'm going to use one of my teardrop paper clips here. Fabric up there, wallpaper. This is a large envelope made out of a book page, so I put a large card inside. 2 large cards inside. And then one of the divider cards that I made behind it. Okay, this one can have the U.S. mail. This was about zip codes, because zip codes were new back then. A book cover, a book jacket, A New You, The Art of Good Grooming. I've used a lot of the pages from this book in various journals. Love this calendar page. This is an envelope made from a book page. And oh, I'm going to leave this out because I have to put that onto some coffee dyed paper. So I'm going to leave it so it sticks out and I know what to do with it and where to put it. A book page made into an envelope. A collaged page. This is obviously the geometry book. There's a vintage flashcard, scrap of scrapbook paper, and pieces from the science textbook. And you got, whoever gets this book gets my favorite envelope collage. This envelope was made out of the science book page. I just love that light bulb. And I like the colors, the blues and the blacks on this envelope. And another large journaling card and one tucked inside. Let's put this one at the top, and it's a can of Del Monte cream style corn. This obviously came out of one of the science books, and I made a tuck spot out of it. Another collage of laces and fabric pieces. Wallpaper. This is a large pocket made out of wallpaper. And I didn't make sure it was dry before I put the cards back in. There we go. So it's got one of the large journaling cards and divider cards. So this is a really big envelope. It's almost as big as the page, but it's really pretty wallpaper. The little bunny on this one. Wallpaper again with a collaged playing card. This is a cardstock envelope. A napkin Mod Podged to a piece of cardboard, it looks like. I believe somebody sent this to me. And a time card and an image from the science book. Wallpaper, and this is a piece of vintage bias tape that I just wrapped around the top edge and sewed. A scrap of scrapbook paper and a booklet made with a page from the science book. On the back of this one, since this one didn't have diagrams or charts or writing on it, I used a piece of feed sack fabric and sewed this quilt card onto it as a pocket, and then glued the whole thing down and tucked in a layaway tag. So those are 3 journals that are in my shop. By the time the video gets published, these will be in my shop. So we have geometry, writing with a purpose, and science for tomorrow's world. So thank you very much for watching. I hope that you really enjoy these types of journals because I would really like to make more of them. So I would really like to hear your opinion of them, and because if you really like them and if they sell well, then I'll make more. But I think I have to do a design team project next for Artsology. So I'll be back as soon as I can with another project. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.